So hi everyone, this is Dr. Alana, and this is the second in our 15-minute research boosts. I'm going to just quickly show you what we did last week because we're building on that week after week, but I recommend that if you like this today, you go and you sign up for the rest of them, which will then guarantee that you'll get the recordings. So we're going to have 15 minutes of conversation from me, sharing my research pathway as I prepare data for publication, and then 15 minutes of conversation. So if you have questions, you need to go to www.wooclap.com/with-data. And the with data doesn't need to be all capitals. I think it works either way. But that is where at the end I'm going to go looking for the questions. So that gives us a good, keeps a record of what people are asking and what people got answered, and allows us to have, forward motion when people ask questions. So you know where to go get the answers. And I'm just signing into that right now. And just to look at with data, we have a couple of people who've already signed in and asked questions. Okay, also, I need help. I need at least one more person who uses PD education to answer some master's questions, interview questions. They're in the United States. It's the University of Michigan. And there's a group of 4 or 5 master's students who are looking at kind of how you learn about PD education, how it works for you and your campus, what works for you, what you might suggest would work better. And I need at least one more person to say yes, they would be interviewed. And then it's on them to set it up with you and to put on the interview. These are first-time interviewers, but so you can run the interview as much as they can, probably. Please, if you would be willing to do that, write me at alana@pd.education, and I will pass it on to them, and I will be very appreciative. Okay, so questions from you and of you, maybe. Our agenda today, I'm going to remind you quickly about the conceptual design of last week. I'm going to also remind you about what is significance, how to think about significance. These slides are in your handouts, and there's a really good slide on significance. I used it myself today, and I found it very helpful. I'm going to introduce you to a new tool, also in the handouts, called the spreadsheet design tool. Pre-publication, and I'm going to show you how it works, and specifically how it's working for me when I'm putting together the plans for writing. Now, what I'm doing will be as good for you if you are doing a 3-chapter dissertation and you have to put out your work 3 different ways, because that's very similar to what I'm doing with my own, or if you're just having a single research design. And then we'll answer the questions at wooclap.com/with-data. All right, so let's think about what we talked about last week. A conceptual design, an easy way to think about a conceptual design is that you've got these pots of literature, and they overlap. And what pots you're focused on and how they overlap, as good as any definition of what a conceptual framework is. So for my research, there's a pot about professional development, often in industry. There's a pot about PhD completion, master's completion too, but actually most of the literature is on PhD completion. And then there's a whole lot of literature about remote or digital or distance learning. There's a lot of words that get used in that one. If I think about it in a Venn diagram, then you can see that in between those points, There might be some work on professional development in a digital format, or professional development as a help for PhD completion, or PhD completion in a digital format. So those would be the in-between sections. Now, why is this useful? It is so useful. In fact, the reason I start with this is because if you're putting together research, if you start with this thought pattern, and once you have your topic and all that work is done, but you're now narrowing down to do a proposal, or because you have data to finish your thesis, because you're building an argument, maybe you're writing articles, journal articles, all of these start really well with this conceptual framework idea, because the review of literature, it'll give you the keywords you're looking up so that you can efficiently find the most up-to-date work that's about the things you're writing about. It helps you sort and segment your ideas. It also helps you put together your headings and your topic areas. And we'll discuss all of those in the literature work that we do next week. Today, we're focused on how it helps with significance and segment, and then we'll move into, as this time goes on, we'll talk about results, findings, doing a publication search, and all of these things, and we'll tie it back to that. So let's talk about significance. What is significance? It is who's going to care about your work, who is going to benefit from your work, and why. And I see it as interlocking Venn diagram. I guess this is my season to think in Venn diagrams. But the smallest is when your work benefits personal practice. And that's personal, and there's a lot of, you can do narrative inquiry, you can do action research, you can do a number of things focused on, I want to benefit the practice of myself or my immediate area. A little larger than that is a population where your work is going to be of a local benefit. This might be a school district, or a school in a school district, or a district area, and they're going to benefit all the schools in their area. Or this might be engineering, when the effect is a particular gap in the literature that your simulations are going to address. So it's a smaller, it's going to contribute. It's going to contribute to your literature, but it's going to contribute in a way that isn't global. So it's still fairly small. And when we talk about finding a gap in the literature, that's the level generally of the significance of that kind of work. All good. All good. None of these, just because they're smaller, they're big, doesn't make them better than each other. But it does matter kind of how you sort them out. So then you have this national level. National, if you're a big country like the United States, if they're also in an innovation, fits into that category. If you're coming up with something new and you're testing it. So something that will have power in your field. And then, of course, there are those studies that are going to be good at a global level. They're addressing a large or persistent problem. They're trying to find an answer to something people have not been able to find the answer to before, or and that work is often collaborative or in a big scale. So I'll show you how this works out using this conceptual framework idea. And so what I'm going to want you all to do, you don't have to do it right now, but I've given you a spreadsheet in your handouts. And this is also, if you're watching by recording, this is the link to that spreadsheet. You can go into sign into your PD education site, and you can type in spreadsheet, and you're looking for the one that's the design tool pre-publication. Or you can build it yourself because it's pretty simple. It is a column, and all the parts of what we do are in the left-hand column. Our statement of the problem, our purpose, our significance, our conceptual frame, topics in the lit, methodology, data collection, data analysis, results, findings, everything. Now, this is a layout that is probably spot on for the social sciences, and the STEMs and engineerings, you may want to change the words on the left. But the words are the basic headings that you need in your chapters that define the logic of how you get your reader from one part to another. And the first three are really the nub of your research. What is it? The statement of the problem is another way of putting it is, what evidence is there that your study needs to be studied? And then once we see that there's evidence, what's the purpose of your study? Are you going to explore, investigate? What verb are you going to use? And how are you going to address the study? And then what is the significance of that study? So how do these two things, the conceptual framework we talked about last week, especially how does it work in my world? So that might give you some ideas of how it would work in your world. I'm not sure I can see this, so bear with me while I open it up. Open up the real document, and it is in your slides. And I think this will do it. Yeah. Okay, so I have data on who came this summer to one of 3 different types of boot camps that we ran, whether or not who of those in the populations that were the samples that were those 3 sets of people who were interested, did they come? Did they do the survey? What did they tell us if they did the survey? How much did they come? What did they get out of it? We're asking those kinds of questions. And when I started this system, I realized that I had more than one article. It's always a good thing. It's nice when you have a lot of data and you can start sorting it into more than one article. So the first one, the obvious one that I really was working on, was the efficacy of remote boot camps. And now this is where you need to see how the parts go together down the system. So boot camps on campus pre-COVID were usually a week long. You put everything together, you hit them with a lot of information. They frequently were for students who were the best students. They were heavily competed to get into it. And now post-COVID, but also just because we need to reach more state people, there's this question of how do we go to scale? So the purpose of this study was to explore an instance of 3 different things that happened at a scale. And so altogether, it's about 900 students, master's and doctoral students, who indicated they were interested in participating in the summer boot camps, and then exploring similarities and differences across the 3 types. Now, I have to caution you that when you write these, if you're going to try this system out for yourself, the specificity of the words you use is absolutely critical. So I did not say I was interested in, I was studying the students who were part of that N. That N is all the students who indicated they were interested. When we look at the data, a lot more were interested than actually showed up, and a lot more showed up some than showed up enough to really get the system. So I have to be very careful that the words I use all the way through don't give a misdirection and that they hang together. So there's a need to study it at scale, and then the purpose of the study is to study one instance made up of 3 different options that happened at a level of scale that doesn't often happen on university campuses. Now we're going to get into significance. Okay, so let's go back here, just so you can think of my thinking. Now, when you talk about significance, you talk about it from the big to the little. And so I decided that my work contributes to the field of higher education through advancing the discussion of remote support systems for master's and doctoral students. So that is a large and persistent problem, and I will have a little bit to say about that. Also contributes by filling gaps in the literature. So I didn't go for innovation. I dropped into the next to the lowest one about gaps in the literature having to do with remote learning and support and supporting graduate students in a remote learning environment. And then finally, contributes to the personal practice of anyone involved in helping students this way. Because I do want to say things that other people who have different systems can glean some information from. So you have to look at the significance and you have to decide, where does yours fit? How much can you really claim? I wouldn't say more than 3. 2 is fine. Very seldom are you going to have just 1. And because our significance does play off of each other. And how can you state it in such a way that it's not overstating it? Now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to give you another example, because I decided that I could, and this will be similar to those of you who are doing a 3-chapter dissertation, I could work my data from a couple of angles. And you'll see next week, that'll mean that the lit will change. That means that the significance changes. Each column has to be contiguous to itself. So another way of looking at this, taking a very small section of the data, is that EDDs are notoriously slow to finish. Many reasons have been given, including, and there's a body of lit that I need to pin down. This study investigates whether and to what extent a robust remote academic, professional development, and learning environment coupled with an expert leader might prove useful in helping educators past challenges that create being stalled out, get them past being stalled. So the purpose of the study is to explore usage and its relevance to completion for a small group of stalled educators who've been at it 7 years pre-proposal. So I'm going to look at usage data, and then I'm going to look at who actually finished and out of the original group who doesn't finish, and see if there's any correlation between usage and the issues that come with getting unstalled. I don't know that there will be, actually. I think it's probably and then I'll do some interviews to see, because my hypothesis is it's a human factor more than a usage factor. But we'll see if they all correlate together. Whatever I find, it will contribute to the global higher education because it addresses a means of support for persistent issues of humanities and education doctoral students being slow to finish. And then it'll also contribute through providing research on innovation in the use of remote development, and that's all. So it's just the top 2 for this one. And next week you'll see how that changes the lit. One more example real quick. I'm also going to take all the data from all the universities and all the students who are using PD education, and I'm going to ask some questions that have to do with scale. What can we learn from looking at the various things that you all do when you come to the site? So what works is a question that underpins the online education development industry. MOOCs revolutionized the research by giving us big data, but they are not typical of a new university situation. This study investigates what works in terms of usage and adoption over a robust landscape of 75,000 students whose universities are making use of this platform. Then the purpose of the study is to investigate usage data for academic and professional development, and the significance, since that's what we're focused on, contributes to the field of online education. So now it's started at the 3rd one. by discussing innovation in the field in terms of remote professional development. And I should actually change that by investigating innovation in the field rather than discussing. Also, because the verb you use are very important. So pay attention to, are you investigating? Are you exploring? Are you whatever? Choose your verbs. Go look at other people's work and see what verbs they're using and decide what verb you really like, because it centers the heart of your project. Fills gaps. So I investigate more often than not. Also fills gaps in literature due to previously only having small sample sizes to discuss adoption of various tools. Finally, will be of use to a practitioner. So I'm shooting for the last 3 in that article. Now, what you're going to see as these 15 minutes roll out is me wrestling with, how do I actually build an argument that shows the significance at those levels? How do we take the data and drill them down? How do I organize the lit so I can get to it? So there's a lot of issues that come up when we first do this design, and I'm right in the middle of them. That doesn't mean that as I go through this, I won't be changing these words, because probably I will. But if you have, the reason I like the spreadsheet is it gives me a short and quick, do I really mean this? Does it really go in the right way? Does it fit all together properly? And for my mind, if I can get it all tight here, I can get it all tight in my writing as well. Okay,